Hi, welcome back. I'm Pete, and this is my tractor. This is a 1960 or 61, I think it's 61, Allis Chalmers D15 industrial. And if you recall from the last video, the tractor was there, and that little white car was there. They have now swapped places. And that's a good thing, because I needed to get that engine running, because I needed to take that to the emissions place. Anyhow, so the engine is now running and it is now here, which means it moves under its own power, which is a good thing. So my real problem was before, I don't know if you remember, but when the tractor was over there, I was saying that the engine was turning over real slowly, too slowly. I thought it was too slow. And I thought that was maybe because the starter was old, or there was some hang up in the hydraulics or in the transmission or something like that. As it turns out, what I had done was swapped the end caps on the connecting rods for cylinders 2 and 3. After I ran it last time, and the front end was still off, I dropped the pan again, and that's when I noticed they were crossed. They were swapped. Now, each of these connecting rods has an offset. I don't know how else to describe that, meaning they're supposed to be, they have an orientation they're supposed to be in. One side of the connecting rod is fatter than the other, and that has to be pointed a certain direction. So I had the pistons right, I had the connecting rods right, but what I had done, I had the connecting rods right as far as the offset goes, but what I had done was put the connecting rods for cylinders 2 and 3 opposite of where they should be. So the piston and connecting rod that was supposed to be in 2, that came out of 2, because I put the offset in backwards to where it should be, was in 3, and vice versa. So anyway, all I did was pull the end caps off, swap the bearings for 2 and 3, and Plastigauge checked them. So I had the right clearance, and that's what cleared it up. So now the engine turns over a lot more easily. And oh, by the way, put the pan and the oil back in. You don't want to forget that step. Anyway, so that was a problem with the engine turning over slowly. Anyhow, so this is just going to be kind of a walk around to kind of look at all the issues this thing has. First, I wanted to point out that these pins aren't the right kind of pins. They're supposed to be a hardened pin in here and then a retainer here, but it looks like this is just a piece of soft iron, soft metal dowel, and how they had retained them was just done stuff like cut them like this and bend them, and then they would put a big old bead of weld on the other side to keep the pin in there. This one down here has something that keeps it in on this side, and there was a bolt on the other side of the one down there, so I was able to get that out. But all the other pins had, like big beads of weld and stuff keeping them in. So we're going to replace those pins, and I'm hoping that the bores here are not too bad. The bottom of this part, the very bottom, has been scraped pretty thin. So I'm going to do a little bit of, I got to find out what kind of metal this is. Is it forged? Is it cast? What is it? To see if I can maybe weld a little bit more, like maybe a 1/4 inch on the bottom to give it a little bit more support, because it is thin down there now. We have the cover that goes across these hydraulics is a little banged up. I'm going to have to take that off and see what's going on there. We also have a crack right here that goes across on this front cross member. This is a structural piece. It doesn't propagate underneath, so I need to find out what's going on with that crack and where'd it go? There it is, and fix it. What I did with the power steering, so when I first moved this back here, I didn't have power steering. I used the Armstrong system. I thought that the power steering got its power from the hydraulics, but I was wrong about that. The power steering is more or less self-contained in that unit, and that red cap down there was the stand. This was on there, kind of like a little standpipe vent type thing, And even though this cap comes off, whoops, that was stuck on there, I could not get a socket on there. For the life of me, I couldn't get a socket past this thing. So I just knocked it off. What's on there now is just a little plastic cap plug. And what I'm going to do, I'm not going to leave that like that. I'm going to put a plug inside there and either weld it or braze it, and then side drill that nut. So focus, get my fat finger out of the way. Side drill that nut so it can be a vent. It's venting now, but it's just got that plastic thing on there. It's not doing a whole lot, but it is doing it. I filled it up with fluid and that power steering works. So eureka, had a good thing happen there. So I'm gonna walk around this side. We're in the middle of an AstroTurf project. If anybody needs any AstroTurf, let me know. The exhaust. So if you'll remember, this thing just had this kind of vertical piece stuck on there, and it had a bunch of clamps and adapters on here so that the muffler could stick to it. Well, I hate exhaust clamps. I think they look ugly. So when I was trying to take them off, I actually snapped this off of there, and I got all pissed off thinking I wrecked my my exhaust manifold. And just set this down so it won't fall. Who cares if it falls? Anyway, I got all mad because I thought I wrecked my exhaust manifold. But then I started looking at this area, this raised up area, and this, and I thought, well, I don't know, maybe is there a heat shield that's supposed to go in there or something? I couldn't quite figure it out. Looked in the parts manual, and the parts manual set me straight. The stock muffler is supposed to slide down into there, and then there's a bracket that's welded to the side of the muffler that clamps on, that attaches to these points, and the muffler just sits in there. So what I did, I took this over to I have a milling machine in there, and I cleaned off the top. I probably could have gone down a little bit more, but I was just trying to make a flat surface. I was trying to see if I could see where the center was, like where the old metal, the old rusty pipe stopped, and the new and the cast iron began. Just so I could find the center. My voice is kind of echoing inside that muffler right now. So I can just kind of find the center of this thing. I didn't get a perfect line on the center, but I got close enough, and I was able to bore an 1.5 inch, 1.5 inch hole all the way down to about here. And then I couldn't find an 1.5 inch pipe to sit in here. So what this is a piece of black Schedule 40 plumbing pipe, 1.25 inches. The inner diameter is 1.25 inches. The outer diameter was about 1.62, 1.65. So I turned that down on the lathe to 1.5 to fit in here. And then on the bottom, well, I can't really, inside this muffler, the inner diameter here is 2.25. So I had to go from 1.5 to 2.25, and there wasn't an adapter that can do that. So I had to make one out of, there's a union, a threaded union that sits up inside here, and I built up the flanges on either end of the union and cut them and turned them down to 2.25, fit them inside, so the upper part of the union is about here, and then the bottom part is down here, and it's welded. And the weld got a little porous, and it got a little ugly, so I ground it a little bit. Anyway, it's working perfectly fine. So that's what I'm doing for exhaust right now. This is obviously not okay. I took out the air cleaner, filled it up with oil, and this is just 1.5 inch hose, and I was hoping it would make that bend. Oops, sorry for the finger there. I was hoping it would make that bend. It obviously doesn't. I'm obviously going to have to buy the correct part. But the carburetor seems to be working just fine. Thing starts and runs and idles and all that good stuff. So we're good there. Kind of dodged a bullet there, I think. But I have to order that part, that correct part. I'm having a little trouble getting the tank to feed. That's why I have this piece of wood under here to elevate the tank a little bit so it feeds down to the carburetor. If I took this hose off, there would be just barely a dribble of fuel coming out of there, just enough to keep the thing running. I have about 5 gallons of fuel in this tank right now, so the fuel's sitting at about this level, which is 1 inch higher, easily 1 inch, probably 2 inches higher than the carburetor. So it should flow. if my understanding of how the world works is correct, it should flow. I'm having some trouble with that though, so maybe, I don't know, maybe I have something wrong with the valve, or maybe I need to clean out the tank a little better. I haven't resolved all the issues in the tank yet, but it does start and run. Fourth gear doesn't exist. Well, it exists, but it jumps out of fourth gear all the time. So I'm gonna have to, at some point, pull that transmission off and fix fourth gear. I have some sort of fluid in my tires. I know people put fluid in there, but I don't know what type is in there. Maybe if you guys can tell me what that is, you can leave me a comment. Let me know what I have in there. When it dries, it leaves a white kind of chalky buildup. In fact, there's a little bit of it starting. Let me see if I can get in there without blocking the video too much. That white ring, it leaves that weird residue when it dries. So whatever fluid that is, that's what I have, and I probably should pull that out because I'm gonna have to clean this up, and there's a lot of rust in there. Probably have to break the wheel down and fix that properly. And the other side, whew, it's getting windy, and the other side is about the same. Speaking of the other side, let's go over there. There's just a piece of plywood falling over. Step over to the other side, and we obviously have really old hydraulic hoses. They're cracked and checked in various places, so they all need to be replaced. So yesterday I did fire it up and took it for a spin around the yard, and played with the loader and all this. And I sprung a leak right. Let me see if I can show you. This angle is going to be. Hold on, let me climb up there. There, I have fluid just coming right out of there. It's been chafed down enough so where fluid comes out, and this is the tilt for the bucket. So every time I tilted the bucket, that came squirting out. So I have to replace that hose first. Whoop, hung up on the switch valve. I have to replace that hose first, and these all look like they're probably just 3/8 hoses with 3/8 NPT swivel hose ends. Looks like they're all 3/8 NPT swivel hose ends, which I got a bunch of this hose at the shop and a bunch of these hose ends, so I can be able to make hoses pretty easy for this machine. Maybe I'll order a bunch more. I've got to order a bunch more hose ends because I'd like to replace all of the hoses on this machine eventually because they're all in pretty bad shape. Let's see, what else? Is there anything else? I can't think of anything. Yeah, so that's where we're at right now. Oh, the other thing, yeah, there is one more thing. So that shuttle lever on the other side of the steering wheel there, having a hard time getting coordinated enough to use that thing. I automatically kind of naturally want to use the clutch pedal, but the machine works a lot better if you use that lever. It really wants you to use that lever. There's something in there that when you depress the clutch pedal, takes a little bit for the engine to spin back up. I'm having a hard time describing what I'm talking about. Maybe that's the shuttle clutch assembly, that once it's spinning, you use that lever and it just makes the transition from forward to reverse a lot smoother and a lot easier. But if you depress the clutch pedal, that stops that assembly from turning, and then when you let out the clutch pedal again, the engine labors for a second as that thing starts to get turning again. Anyhow, there's something in there that's heavy, that's turning, that it's a lot easier to use if you use the lever rather than the clutch. So that's going to have to be my got to get used to that feature. Let's see, anything else? Obviously the tires are going to need replaced. Those are the wrong tires, and obviously those are on backwards. Oh, I wanted to take a look at this other tire. Yeah, that's rusted pretty bad. That's pretty gross. I'm surprised, and it's even wet. So that's leaking whatever fluid is too. In fact, there's more of it just kind of in here. So maybe it's coming out somewhere else, or maybe this leakage here is from when the wheel was turning earlier yesterday. I'm also missing a lug bolt. Anyway, let's see. I think that's about all I had to show you for now. It does run. It does work. Oh, the other thing, last thing, is when I was operating the lift arms, that pump was laboring. It was making a lot of noise. So I think I'm going to drain the fluid out, maybe put a little bit thicker fluid in. I got to see what this calls for. I don't know if it calls for 20 weight, 32, 46, whatever. But whatever it calls for, I'm going to drain out this fluid, the hydraulic fluid, and put in the next heavier viscosity. Sometimes when pumps start to fail, if you put in a little bit thicker oil, a little bit thicker fluid, it does help it last a little bit longer. But I have to find out what the system is supposed to have, and it certainly needs a service anyway. And I'm hoping there's a filter. I haven't seen a hydraulic filter on this yet. I'm hoping there's one in there somewhere. Anyhow, okay, well, that's it for now. We have some parts are coming. I have a flapper coming, and I'm going to be replacing the tie rod ends. Those are all flopping around like crazy. Those are coming, and I have to get a new intake, the right angle intake hose. Got to get that on order, and get the fuel tank straightened out so it feeds properly. But other than that, we're actually making pretty good progress. This thing actually works. So thanks for watching. Stay tuned.